It is not the size of the dog in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the dog. Yes, it is. That was said many times by Mark Twain. Dwight D. Eisenhower said it a couple times, and it's very true. Hello, everyone. This is Daryl Guberman, the CEO of Guberman PMC LLC, a quality consulting firm here in Connecticut. As of August 2023, we'll be doing this business for 12 years. Today, we have a very special guest here. We've been bringing about and we've been moving forward a situation where my background is aerospace, medical implants, medical materials, printing, and plastic distribution, where we dealt with all different industries. Thousands of them, really. Unbelievable. But we're going to go and hit upon the aerospace arena. We know a lot about it, and we have a very special guest. Let me introduce you to Mitch Snyder. He happened to come in here again for another cameo appearance. We've done a lot of videos concerning the mess that we're going to expose to Mitch, because this video today is about Mitch Snyder of Bell Helicopter needs to protect the $2.2 billion DOD new helicopter contract win, because the ink on that contract is not dry, Mitch, as yet. You may think it, but I will say this. Once I get done showing you and the public what is truly going on here with ANSI, the American National Standards Institute, you're going to be very proactive in keeping the pressure on until that ink on that contract is dry. And even then, you have the opportunity of losing it. In 2005, in a January 28th, 2005 article in the New York Times, it stated that Lockheed wins the VH-1 presidential helicopter away from Sikorsky after many, many years. Well, I will tell you a little piece of that. Let's go to 2008. I had an interview with some people at Sikorsky Aircraft for a management position. They said to me the former vice president got a performance bonus for doing some cost-cutting initiatives in the quality arena, quality department, where I originally was at Sikorsky Aircraft between 1983 and 1995. And I got laid off with about 800 people because Bill Clinton, President Clinton, in 1992 made a proclamation, said, well, the Soviet Union is gone. We can now get rid of 500,000 people out of the aerospace industry. They started in 92. They caught up to me in 95, and they finished it off, I think, in about 2000. They had all 500,000 people eradicated, so to speak, outside the aerospace industry. Engineers, quality, manufacturing, you name it, they were gone. 500,000 people. So I went back in 2008 for an interview. There was a director of quality, a manager there, and the director of quality said, Daryl, when you were here in 95, we had over 1,000 people in quality. Now we're down to 380, and there's recs out concerning more quality people to be in. I do not make this up, but as usual, when it comes to people in general, they're going to deny what I'm telling you, but I tell you facts. As you're going to see in this video, all it is facts. So they were down to 380 people. My feeling is in 2005, the vice president had already retired, I think, in 2001. He got his performance bonus for cost-cutting initiatives, and that's it. I think it was a quality issue, absolutely, that the government didn't want to, because they had issues with quality. They cut back more than almost 50% of the inspection. They cut back at Sikorsky. They went from 1,000 to about 380 people. And off the record, I'll give you those two gentlemen who interviewed me. I'm not going to tell you on camera, but I think they're still around. If they were gone, I would tell you. So if you want to call me, Mitch, go right ahead, because we've got all the pertinent data. This video is going to be long, Mitch, but it's going to be fruitful for you to understand the facts of the matter. We've looked into your business, and you have a little bit of issues, hiccups in your quality certification arena. We will get to that in this video. We will also get to the fact that you have to be proactive, because Bell is a small David against a Goliath. Lockheed Martin, Lockheed Sikorsky, Boeing, all of them, those organizations have poor quality. It's been written up. I did a video just last week on 800 F-35s, the article was, yet Lockheed is producing still defective materials. So they built 800 aircraft. You would think after 50 of them, they would get this down, or less, that they would get their shit together. Well, they produce it, and I want to continue on. Also, Boeing fudged documentation. They have problems with their quality. There's a 737 MAX, their 777, 787. Mitch, sit down. Let's get going, and I'm going to show you this stuff. I know you see the factor of a half a nut fuck you behind me. That was said to me by Russ Cheney, the chairman of the American National Standards Institute, where Lockheed Martin, with Jim Passett, the CEO, sits with Boeing, okay? And that's David Calhoun with Boeing, the CEO, as well. They sit on that organization. In fact, they have personnel that sit on ANSI's board, which means that I guess they condone it. Well, at least, Mitch, you know what it is. Their quality is half a nut fuck you. Russ Cheney was already telling us, prophesizing about Lockheed and Boeing's quality. But anyway, I want to get into this. I want to show you how he said half a nut fuck you. We're going to take you through the litany of what takes place, why I feel you're going to lose that contract. What happened is Lockheed gave up the VH-1 program back to Sikorsky because probably somebody whispered, an actuary that works at Lockheed probably whispered in somebody's ear and says, listen, let Sikorsky have it. In another 10 years, we're going to buy it. We'll get it anyway. Nice. You know, I'm sure if you can think it, it can happen, as my dear departed mother would say. So what happened is we had some customers of ours that wanted to get ISO 17025 certified. So we got the standard, we looked at it, and we said, that's no problem. I looked even further, and we found out that there's a Miss Pamela Sale, who is a vice president of accreditation for laboratory, for ANAB and ASCLD Lab, that is owned by ANSI and ANAB. ANAB does laboratory certifications. They also accredit, and they also own with ANSI, ANAB, they own ASCLD Lab. ANSI took over complete control over ANAB in 2018. You'll see it. And Pamela Sale basically confessed to the factor about what happened in Wuhan, China, about the release of the COVID virus. She basically said it, and I'm going to show this to you. And I'm going to add in her little blurb phlebotomy labs and biolevel 4 labs, because a laboratory is a laboratory, Mitch. It truly is. And this is what it said. One of the issues, right over here, one of the issues is that there is no commonly agreed upon set of standards that forensic labs, phlebotomy labs, or biolevel 4 labs around the country have to follow. Instead, there are informal guidelines labs choose to follow or not. And I added this in. Voluntary consensus standards fail, since standards are meant to be uniform throughout a particular industry, laboratory, automotive, aerospace, electronics, medical, service industries, but they are not, as Ms. Sales illustrated in her deposition. Yes, you don't make this up. So what we did is we came out with a video, Mitch, about A2LA sitting over by ANAB, sitting over by ASCLD Lab on the board of ANSI. The reason why we do this is because we found impropriety when you have these organizations, like, for example, you have Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson, we'll get to. That sits right over by the FDA, USDA, CDC, NIH. You have now A2LA sitting by, and ASCLD Lab and ANAB sitting by the same laboratories like forensic laboratories, sheriff's departments, Department of Forensic Sciences run by the FBI, who had their certificate in 2015 taken away because of improprieties with process. And, well, impropriety, she already said, Pamela Sales said, they don't know what to do. There's no protocols. They pick this and they pick this. Easiest way for me to describe it in simple terms. This is really bare bones. If one laboratory is testing some material with a test tube, another laboratory for the same test might be testing it with a graduated cylinder. So in order for you to have coalesce the system, to bring it together, if you're testing one with a test tube, you should test the same thing with a test tube. She basically said one has a graduated cylinder, the other has a test tube. Unbelievable. So we exposed A2LA sitting on ANSI's board, okay? And they are sitting on ANSI's board, as you can see. And they not only sat on ANSI's board, but at the time, Mitch, between 2015 and 2021, the A2LA, accreditation body for laboratory, was being controlled and watched over by Communist China, who had been handed over the International Accreditation Forum Incorporated in Delaware, an American company. We had a Miss Ashley Morton, who works for A2LA, right at the bottom of my video. A2LA does not sit on ANSI. They are both American accreditation bodies with equal standing. Well, I expose a factor again, Mitch. I will show you. And as you know, A2LA does sit on ANSI's board. We had a call on July 26, 2019, from a Mr. Russ Cheney. Russ Cheney is the chairman of the board at that time, 2019. What I'm going to do, since we have it ready, I am going to play you his voicemail that he left us, because I think it is absolutely disgusting that you have a chairman of the board of a 104-year-old company. You have a chairman that has such vulgarity, and it is. And here it is.
I'll return your call as soon as possible. Record you. This is Russ Cheney. Please leave a message and I'll return your call as soon as possible. Record you.
So here is the chairman of the board, okay, of ANSI, who is the light of ANSI's board members, both government and corporations. And what he says is an example of what these people are who are sitting on the board, like Lockheed Martin with Jim Tasic, with Boeing, David Calhoun. I wonder if they use such language. I could see it on the golf course, but not calling somebody up. Unbelievable. So here is Russ Cheney and what he said. Yes, half a nut, fuck you. And he did say that. And ANSI says it because he is the chairman. Now, what I did, Mitch, is I did something that anybody with common sense would, especially a guy in my position, I wrote a letter. And let me show you these three people. I wrote a letter to Joe Battia, the CEO of ANSI. Yes, I wrote it to him. And I sent him the recording as well. He sent it to his attorney, Jameson Carroll of Carroll and Weiss in Atlanta, Georgia. He said, and I will say it again, he said this attorney, he said, after analysis, we were unable to identify any harassing or objectionable content in the brief audio file. Absolutely deplorable. They were protecting him. Absolutely. So let me go up to 2022, if I may, please, Mitch. 2022, I put in because I saw a director-at-large position. They were having voting and elections. So I put a 54-page document into ANSI, okay? 54 pages, 16 letters of recommendation from customers, okay? In fact, I think I sent this to you guys at Bell. I think I did. And no response as yet. Everybody's silent because they're scared that I'm going to turn out right. I looked into my crystal ball, and Lockheed, Sikorsky, and Boeing will ultimately take the contract away from Bell. It's proven in the past. 2005, Lockheed takes the VH-1 presidential from Sikorsky, and the finagling and wingling and dealing, they gave it back to Sikorsky. Isn't that a tender moment in a turbulent world? So anyway, I put this in, right, Mitch? I was asked, there was 9 questions to ask, but let me just say this. On the front cover page of the submission, Joe Battia said, congratulations, nominee, for wanting to get on the ANSI board. Please look at these following items. And I did, and I clicked on them. They were click items. And they were code of conduct. Code of conduct. And in the code of conduct, I never read half a nut, fuck you. Are you kidding me? Unbelievable. So there were 9 questions I had to answer as to what Daryl Guberman is going to do to facilitate the initiatives of ANSI, not only in the United States, but throughout the world. I wrote that I wanted to be that person, that representative, Mitch, for the small mom and pop shop that supply materials to companies like yours, to Boeing, to Lockheed, Lockheed Sikorsky, to United Technologies, Honeywell, etc. I wanted to be that. I wanted because they have nobody right now that represents them at all in that capacity. So I felt that not only could I do that, but maybe I could change their mission statement, since this is the mission statement, since Russ Cheney was and is, and I'm going to show you, the chairman. So at the end of these 9 questions, there was a nice little blurb from this guy. So let me just say this, Mitch. It says this. The committee appreciates your interest in serving in an ANSI leadership position and your willingness to provide us with the additional information. Sincerely, Russ Cheney. Half a nod. Fuck you, Russ Cheney, the guy who said that. So you find anything wrong with that, Mitch? Now we get into your issues, because they're a lot. And it's not you, it's the people you're dealing with in winning that contract. And as I said, ladies and gentlemen, business owners, the ink is not dry. And even when it dries, still not safe. In 2014, I have to read this. We sent a letter, I sent a letter to Randy Doty asking him, why does ANAB's website state that certificates issued by ANAB accredited certification bodies are probably accredited? Do you hear that? Do you hear that? You probably don't even know that, Mitch. You got a probably up on the board if it's ANAB accredited. And this is what he wrote back. Here he is. At the time, Randy was the vice president of ANAB, the chairman and principal on the International Accreditation Forum Incorporated in Delaware. And this is what he said. The answer is very simple. An accredited registrar is not required to issue only accredited certifications, just as a company voluntarily decides to be certified by accreditation bodies, decide to become accredited, and even if accredited, a registrar is not required to issue accredited certifications only. A certificate is considered accredited only if it bears an accreditation mark. Now, this is the vice president of ANAB, the accreditation body. He should know what an official cert is. You heard it. He said that a certificate is considered accredited only if it bears the accreditation mark. This came right out of their website. Is your certificate accredited? If your certificate was issued by an ANAB accredited certification body registrar, the answer to this question is probably yes. Probably does not give you security. An accredited certificate should include both the registrar's mark and the accreditation body's mark of the accreditation body. Be sure to look for both those marks. Now you have this inconsistencies in quality, Mitch. You have the vice president of ANAB who doesn't know what an official cert is supposed to have. And I have it, by the way. If you want it, I'll gladly send it to you. In 2013, Mitch, I gave a speech at the American Society for Quality. I gave it concerning the quality issues, like you saw and heard with Randy. He didn't know what the hell an official cert is. Of a vice president didn't know what an official cert is. And it's disgusting. So I gave a speech, and there was a gentleman there who was sent there to discredit me, Dave Levy, Region 3 Deputy Director of the ASQ. Now, at the time, Mitch, ASQ, the American Society for Quality, and ANAB, ANSI, the American National Standards Institute, owned the American National Crediting Board, ANAB, 50-50. And this is what he said. Okay? He said that ANAB supports us. I will hold it here. You can stop the video. We're going to continue on. On top of that, 2016, Randy Doty wrote us, because we wrote him, when he was a technical advisor of ANAB, and he was also the treasurer and principal on the IAF, International Accreditation Forum Incorporated in Delaware. He said that it's all voluntary. If you want to join ANAB or IAF, go ahead. But I will say this, Mitch. In 2016, we wouldn't even go there to be a dog catcher, because in 2015, Randy had handed over the International Accreditation Forum to a communist Chinese national, Zhao Jinwu, who's been involved with our quality since 1994. We are a proud American. We would not join an organization that is proliferating not only cybersecurity issues, but also communism. You have a communist national who's running an American company at the time when he asked us to join. We would not do that. Randy also said this about our company. But we recognize and accept there are conformity assessment bodies and bodies such as your accreditation body and registrar that are not part of the IAF and ILAC structure. Now, I'm going to say this too, Mitch. We discovered, and you'll see it in here, that ANSI, ANAB are underwriters, which means they take full legal responsibility for the International Accreditation Form and ILAC, the International Laboratory Accreditation Cooperation. So when Zhao Jinwu went into the laboratory in 2017, we have a picture that's coming up too, and certified the lab to the, he was also, Zhao Jinwu not only was the chairman of the IAF when he was standing in Wuhan, China, he was also the chief executive of the China National Accreditation Services in Beijing, China. And that laboratory, when released the virus, per Pamela Sales' deposition, basically, okay, she's saying it, they have no protocol in any of the labs, not just in Wuhan, China at the biolevel 4, but in any labs throughout the United States and the world, yet they still issue a certificate. It's absolutely deplorable because he's the representative of IAF. That means ANSI ANAB takes legal responsibility because he is the chairman of the IAF at the time of certification of the ISO 17025. But ANSI and ANAB will say to you, we only certify the system, we don't certify the product. Well, sorry, game over. Once you take legal responsibility being an underwriter, that verbiage is out the window. Going on further, Randy said, while my colleagues and I at ANAB can attest to the confidence in the integrity and competence of registrars accredited by IAF accreditation bodies, we cannot attest this for your body. Well, I can attest this for my body because I'm the man. Okay, these guys, okay, can attest it. I'll tell you something. You look at Pfizer. Pfizer had 15 million vials of COVID vaccine taken back because of contamination and skipping quality processes and standards. You have Johnson & Johnson, 60 million vials, contamination, skipping quality standards. You have Lockheed Martin, 800 aircraft. They built 800 with quality issues and all that, and they still have quality issues. And Lockheed sits on ANSI's board. They also sat on the IAF at the time China was there. We're going to show you, Mitch, that Lockheed Martin gets hacked in 2009 by China. United Technologies, Sikorsky Aircraft, 2012. In 2015, Lockheed buys Sikorsky for $9 billion, but they had to get China's okay. We'll show that to you. On top of it, we have the full representation of Connecticut's political arena. Rosa DeLauro, Jim Himes, Christopher Murphy, and Richard Blumenthal all praise Lockheed for working with communist China. We have Chris Wray here, in representing the FBI, the director who always says China is a detriment to the United States and the United States way of life. So we continue. You have ANSI, the American National Standards Institute, is a private, not-for-profit, non-governmental corporation that has both federal agencies and corporations on board. Here it goes, Mitch. 2015, Randy Doty, Vice President of ANAB, Chairman of the IAF, and also Principal on the IF 990 tax firm, handed over leadership to Zhao Jinwu, Communist Chinese national, who is also the Chief Executive of the China National Accreditation Services in Beijing, China. He's been involved with our quality since 1994. He is mandated, Mitch, by his country of origin to take your data, everybody's data, through the China National Intelligence Law, Article number 7. ANSI took over complete control over ANAB in 2018. You have federal agencies and corporations on board. 2017, Randy Doty sat being advertised on the Department of Homeland Security. We will show you, and this is another reason why Bell Helicopter is on a slippery slope when it comes to losing that contract. I am telling you, Mitch, you better stay on top. You have to stay on top of it. There's only one issue, ladies and gentlemen, that Mitch used to work for Lockheed Martin on the F-16 program. He was into management there. He also represented Lockheed in the European and Mideast affairs. So, and that's what I'm going to say, but we're going to continue on. So we have him as a China National Accreditation Services leader. You have Randy again being advertised in the Department of Homeland Security at the same time when Zhao Jinwu was the head of the IAF. Cybersecurity issues, damn well told. In fact, any and all of the corporations and federal agencies that sit on ANSI's board have had their data taken. In fact, in 2016, Randy complimented Zhao Jinwu for being involved with our quality since 1994, and also about being the chairman of the IAF. This is a sheet that shows over 10 different registrars in China that are accredited by ANAB that can issue an ANAB accreditation. On top of it, Mitch, you have ANSI and ANAB. This is one of the reasons why I would not join when Randy asked us in 2016, is that you have ANSI and ANAB sitting, on the IAF at the time when the Chinese national was there from 2015 to 2021. And on top of it, you've got Iran and Pakistan. Iran and Pakistan, who admitted harboring some of the terrorists of 9/11. You have Pakistan, who harbored Osama bin Laden, and ANSI and ANAB are sitting right by them. How could I do that? And I don't talk about the Iranian people or the Pakistani people. I talk about their leadership. Their leadership. Continuing on. I want to read this from Randy right now, because this is another point that I wanted to show you. And I want to show you how bad it is, because they are entrenched in our government, Mitch. Randy was lying. This was 2014 again. I know it was, 9 years ago, but it's just as solid as it was when he wrote it. When he was the vice president of ANAP, the chairman of the IAF, and the principal on the IAF tax report. And we asked him a question. Under what regulated authority does ANAB operate? His response was, as I mentioned earlier, ANAB is the ANSI ASQ, as I told you, National Accreditation Board. We are a limited liability corporation, 50-50 by ANSI and ASQ. We are not operating under any governmental regulatory authority, with the exception of being a legal entity. Any authority we have is by having an accreditation services accepted and recognized by the marketplace. Become a signatory to the IAF-MLA multilateral agreement contributes to this recognition and acceptance. Any IAF-MLA that is, equivalent to ANAB, ANAB takes the legal responsibility because they are an underwriter. So you heard that, right? We will keep this out because I'm going to probably read this again when we hit the Department of Homeland Security. Here's Zhao Jinwu, as I told everybody, and I told you, Mitch. He's in Wuhan, China. At the time, he was the chairman of the International Accreditation Forum, incorporated in Delaware. He is also the chief executive of the China National Accreditation Services, issuing an ISO 17025 in Wuhan, the BioLevel 4 laboratory. Mitch, Senator Rand Paul inquisitioned Anthony Fauci of the NIH, and you're going to find out as I go further that the NIH, you'll find it in videos below, NIH, CDC, FDA, USDA, Pfizer, and Johnson & Johnson all sit harmoniously together on ANSI. And you have Anthony Fauci, who said he didn't know anything about gain of function when Senator Rand Paul asked him. Well, this came right out of a technical magazine that I have, and you will see that this is the second annual workshop of China and the United States. And this was held between May 17th to 19th, 2017. And you'll see the first topic is gain of function research. We have the booklet, by the way, Mitch. If you want to sit there and read this, we will gladly send it to you. And here it is, just to prove to you, there is Zhao Jinwu in the lab in Wuhan. And the last page is, of course, what I showed you. There it is, about the workshop. We have that. I'm going to read this again to you, Mitch, because I think people should understand that Randy was lying, just as they talk about their mission statement as half a nut, fuck you. That they're not lying about, because you have failures in aerospace, automotive, electronics, service industries, everything. Randy said, as I mentioned earlier, now this is when he was the vice president of ANAB, the chairman of the IAF and principal on the IAF tax report. As I mentioned earlier, ANAB is the ANSI ASQ National Accrediting Board. We are a limited liability corporation owned 50-50 by ANSI and ASQ. We are not operating under any governmental regulatory authority, with the exception of being a legal entity. Well, let's show you about legal entity. Let's bring you in to the Homeland Security. As I told you, Randy sat on the home. We will show it to you very shortly. And they also sat, okay, if you take a look at this, there they are on ANSI's board, the Department of Homeland Security. Now, they got hacked. We have all that information. And here it is. This was page 1 in 2017 of the Department of Homeland Security's web page. This was number 1. You click your mouse again, and boom, this is page 2, and you can see Randy Doherty being advertised as the Vice President of ANAB. We have the date stamped there and all that. This is in September of 2017. We exposed the factor because we believed, and it's true, that a private enterprise cannot be being advertised on a government agency website. And this was what happened several months later. This is April of 2018. Here's the first page. Looks very similar to the page that we saw back in 2017. You click it again, and wow, Randy has disappeared. We'll show you both of them. This is the one from 2017 right here. This is the one from 2018. You click both of them. This is 2017. This is 2018, April. This is September, when we expose that. We're also going to show you this, Mitch. This is another reason why you have to stay on top of this and don't lose sight of your goal. Because you have a guy, at the time when Randy was sitting there on the Department of Homeland Security, his name is Phil Matheson, and his title is Executive Director, Office of Standards, U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Now, you remember what Randy said in his little blurb. He said this, and I read it to you again. He said, when we asked what authority is he, the authority does ANAB operate, he said, we are not operating under any governmental regulatory authority with the exception of being a legal entity. Well, here is this guy, Phil Matheson, getting a stipend or paid by ANSI. So this is the way they wheedle their way into the government. He is the Executive Director of the Office of Standards, U.S. Department of Homeland Security, DHS, and he's making $262,000. And at the time, and we will show you, he was getting it as a royalty payment. Very little taxes, if any, got taken out of that salary. We also bring NIST into it, the Department of Commerce. The Department of Commerce, Mitch, who has NIST SB 800 for cybersecurity in 2013, the National Vulnerability Database run by NIST and the Department of Commerce was hacked by China, no less. And as you can see, they're on ANSI's board. We have a Gordon Gillerman. Here it goes again. Now, what did Randy say? Oh, my goodness. Randy said, let me read this to you again. He said, we are not operating under any governmental regulatory authority with the exception of being a legal entity. Well, don't you think that Phil Matheson, who's a director of standards and all that, he's working with them. He's getting paid by them. I think Randy is lying once again. They all lie. And when you catch them, they all have bad tempers. Like Russ Cheney, he called up because somebody probably pushed him to it, to call me up and say that. And he had the biggest calhouns to leave me half a nut, fuck you. But I think really, ladies and gentlemen, I think what he did was he was telling us about the quality that their organization dispenses. So for those of you who are ANAB accredited, look up at your cert. That's a half a nut, fuck you. Maybe you like it. But here's Gordon Gilliman, $120,000. Okay, royalty payment, he gets it. Now, NIST runs the NIST MEP, Manufacturing Extension Partnership throughout the United States, Mitch. Okay, they're the most bogus organization that you can have. They should be disbanded. Talking about saving money, shutting down the government. This is one organization that should be shut down. And I'm going to tell you why. They get both state and federal funding, where almost 65% of it, to be exact numerically wise, 64.85% gets dispensed to their management and personnel. Okay, in fact, one of their former employees wrote me and said, Daryl, one not-for-profit, they're not-for-profit too, one not-for-profit gives to another not-for-profit, gives to another not-for-profit, and in the office we used to say, oh, it's money laundering. Isn't that nice? Mitch, this is what a royalty payment is right here. You can turn off the video or hold up on it, and you can read this. This came right out of the 990 tax form that ANSI had, and I looked it up on the tax report at the time, and that's exactly it. We have a very special guest here, Mitch. We have a Mr. Christopher Wray. Yes, he's dressed in a clown suit because every time he beats on his Chinese drum, Mitch, it's a sad state of affairs. He beats, I think his drum is manufactured in China and the rest of his getup is in China. He said at the last deposition on November 15, 2022, he talked about TikTok being a detriment to our world and China, how they are bad. He, in fact, said the whole of the Chinese society is a threat to the U.S. and the Americans must step up to defend themselves. Well, I will tell you right now, that's what he says, right, Mitch? And I'm going to show you this. In 2016, they signed a contract with ANAB. Do you see the interconnection between Lockheed, Sikorsky, Boeing? And look at this. The FBI is with ANAB. 2016, they signed a contract with them about laboratory. And on top of it, Mitch, and Christopher Wray has stepped up because I think he's embarrassed. He forgot his bulbous nose and flappy feet. He had to come in here barefoot. The FBI sat on ANSI's board between 2015 and 2021 when China was in control of it. You know something? FBI has been hacked. I have all the documentation. During that time, 2015 to 2021, they were hacked by China. You can't say it hacked. They gave the data away. You have the Federal Trade Commission, and this is where it gets a little bit sticky for you, Mitch, because sitting on ANSI's board is the same federal agency that signs off the contract that you won, where the ink is still not dry. You have, here it is, the Department of Defense, who signs off that appropriation. And this video, again, business owners, fellow citizens, is about Mitch Snyder of Bell Helicopter needs to protect the $2.2 billion DOD new helicopter contract, but you see that they're with ANSI too. We know that ANSI ANAB are underwriters for the International Accreditation Forum in Delaware and also the International Laboratory Accreditation Cooperation, which means by them being an underwriter, if they say they only certify the system, not the product, because they're an underwriter, as it says here, an underwriter is any party that evaluates and assumes another party's risk for a fee. That means that verbiage about only certifying the system is out the window. And this confirms it on a government contract. Okay, this came off a government contract in 2018 when the IAF was still controlled by communist China. Basically, what they did, Department of Defense, basically opened the door and let China in. And this states here that ANAB is the underwriter for the International Accreditation Forum. You also have the Department of Justice sitting there. Isn't that nice? The people who Lockheed brings it to, I know they brought it to the Government Accounting Office about they felt that they were slighted about losing the contract, the Black Hawk contract. But look who's there, the Department of Justice. There is no justice, to tell you the truth. Also on Boeing, I'll show you this. Boeing, okay, calls out on their procedures, stacking the deck. This is what it is. Note the seller, this is on the supplier portal, the seller shall have a current third-party certification to ISO 9001 and AS 9100 from an ANSI ASQ National Accrediting Board. Now it says ANSI ANAB, and they even, in fact, give you the anab.org website. In 2002, Mitch, Boeing put out a procurement specification. A procurement specification they put out in 2002 stating that their suppliers can supply material. They just send them the AS 9100, which for those people who don't know is a certification, ISO cert for aerospace only. And if you are AS 9100 and you submit that to Boeing, Boeing doesn't have to send anybody out to see you. In fact, in 2009, because they sit over by the FAA on the ANSI board, and you're going to see that too, the FAA seceded inspection for the 737 MAX and probably all the other varieties of the aircraft that they build. What that means, Mitch, I'm sure you know what that means. That means Boeing could design it, develop it, build it, fly it, and crash it, and the FAA will sign off on it. Isn't that a tender moment? We have it all. So, we continue. Lockheed Martin, we sent a letter to them in 2015 concerning them sitting on the international accreditation form. And and this is what Lisa Gross said. I'm going to just hold it here. She was the SAS ethics officer. You can read it. It just basically says, we only accept IAF. Well, we have a lot of customers who supply materials to big OEM aerospace and medical contractors. Okay, so she doesn't know what she's talking about. She was fed this line of baloney, Mitch. On top of it, Mitch, Lockheed Martin sits on ANSI's board. Do you see this? Lockheed Martin sits over by the same federal agency that's going to re-sign the contract to Lockheed Sikorsky and, of course, Boeing. Here they are sitting on the IAF during when the China 2015 to 2021. China didn't really give a damn because they had already hacked Lockheed. What more do they need? I know they have the Patriot missile. They have I know they have the Israeli Iron Dome. They have that information. China does. So you have a lot of issues that are going on. On top of that, Lockheed Martin sitting on this board is considered an associate member. An associate member can vote on policy, yet they sit over by Iran and Pakistan, who killed 3,000 American lives. Well, right now, I don't know how many missiles are killing Russians and all this over that in the Ukraine, so I guess Lockheed doesn't give a shit. By the way, give a shit is a quality term. You have this, 2009, about Lockheed getting hacked by China. Another document about Lockheed getting hacked by China. And an NSA report about Lockheed getting hacked. But this is the pinnacle of issues. As I said to you, Mitch, that Lockheed had and it's going to be down below, about the 800 aircraft. And the article went on to say, even after 800 aircraft, Lockheed Martin still has issues. Not only Lockheed Martin, but they have issues with their engines as well from Pratt & Whitney. And we have the reports. We would not say it if it was not fact. Okay? And let me just read this to you, if I may. This came off, here it is. Here's Pratt & Whitney again. And also, you have Pratt & Whitney, and also you have the F-35 and the engines. F-35 and the engines. If you need any of these, I'll gladly send them to you, 203-556-1493, or Daryl, tqrs@yahoo.com. We're going to go a little bit further. And this came right off a government contract. Actually, this came off right off a government inspection document. And it's actually Inspector General document. The F-35 program, the F-35 program, Mitch, excuse me, did not sufficiently implement or flow down technical and quality management system requirements to prevent the fielding of non-conformant hardware and software. This could adversely affect aircraft performance, reliability, maintainability, and ultimately program cost. Lockheed Martin and its subcontractors did not follow disciplined AS9100 specifications. Also, they get the same findings for their aircraft engine. And remember this, Mitch, and I'm going to show you this again because you need to see this. Lockheed Martin sits on ANSI. ANSI, ANAB, they sit right over by their accreditation body that many of their suppliers use. Yet they have rejections of the yin-yang. Yin-yang is a quality term. That means they have a lot of problems. So, continuing on. United Technologies sits on ANSI too, and during that time they got hacked in 2012. Now it's Lockheed Sikorsky. On the Connecticut Mirror in 2015, when Lockheed bought Sikorsky, this is what it said. With China's okay, Lockheed Martin to close on the Sikorsky purchase, and it said in the context of that article, it said, but Connecticut lawmakers praise Lockheed Martin for clearing its last regulatory hurdle. Those lawmakers, of course, were Rosa DeLauro, Jim Himes, Chris Murphy, and Richard Blumenthal, praised our #1 military contractor, Lockheed Martin, for working with communist China. On top of it, so many of you have been writing me concerning the hacking of Lockheed and Sikorsky and all that. They said, how do you know? Well, here it is. There you go. You have the F-35 and the Chinese knockoff. You have the Black Hawk and the Chinese knockoff. So yes, those organizations, corporations, were hacked. Also, you have Boeing that was hacked. And I will read you what it says on the supplier portal. On the supplier portal of Boeing, okay? On the supplier portal of Boeing, you can stop the video, but I'm going to read this to you because it's very important. Boeing supplier portal. Certification body is accredited for these quality management systems by ANSI, ASQ, National Accreditation Board, or equivalent, which means the equivalent per the letter that I've read to you many times from Randy Doherty about an IAF MLA is Iran and Pakistan, which means, in essence, they could have Iran and Pakistan come in and do an audit per their own requirements, okay? A lot of you are going to say, that doesn't happen. On top of it, and Mitch, the reason why I show this to you is because they've got problems, okay? Lockheed and Boeing both have quality problems that you can't be beat because, and not only that, they fudge documentation. You can't make this up. Boeing fudged it and Kobe Steel fudged it. What is that telling you? They're not going to take their airplane apart to get those pieces out. So you have planes more than likely still flying with forged whatever they did. Whether it was tensile strength, whether it was modulus of elasticity, mechanical testing, hardness testing. Let me just say something. When you have this, if it's Boeing, don't get going. And Mitch, this is the progressive resistance. You have Boeing and Lockheed Martin both sitting, being watched over at the time, 2015 to 21, by communist China. You have federal agencies and corporations all doing the ANSI deal. And I'm going to say this to you, Mitch. The ink on your contract isn't dry yet. The last thing I'm going to show you, Mitch, concerns you. This is very, very disconcerting indeed. Because here you go. You have NQA at one of your facilities, I think, in Canada. You have also the Federal Aviation Industry, Federal Aviation, and also the Department of Transportation. Sitting on ANSI's board is the FAA, as I showed you, as I told you. Also, sitting on there is the Department of Transportation. This is where you have your FAA certificate. It's all been watched over by communist China. And it's absolutely craziness, Mitch. It really is when you look at this in its full story here. And then NQA. NQA sits on ANSI's board, right over by the accreditation body of ANAP. So your certificate that you have for quality at Bell is compromised because it sits right over by the accreditation body that it uses. So you may not care about this, but I care about the people who work at your facility. Mitch, you're also a former Lockheed employee, F-16, and you assisted in the European marketplace and also the Middle East marketplace. And Mitch, I'm in your corner because that's David against Goliath. I've been fighting ANSI and ANAP for a long time. They send their henchmen out after us. And I think it's absolutely deplorable that we can't work in the same space. What we have is quality. What they have is half a nut fuck you. And that extends, Mitch, not only to ANSI, but those that they certify, those that they evaluate. And it's absolutely, without a doubt, very problematic. And I'm going to leave it here, Mitch. I think I've told you enough. This video, again, business owners, my fellow citizens, is Mitch Snyder of Bell needs to protect the $2.2 billion DOD new helicopter contract. And as I've showed you, Mitch, and I will show it to you again, the Department of Defense sits on ANSI's board, right over by Lockheed, Sikorsky, and Boeing. So you better stay on top of it. 203-556-1493 or Daryl, TQRS at yahoo.com. I'm sorry for the length of this, business owners, my fellow citizens, but this video is very important, and I'm trying to protect your tuchus, bitch. Tuchus, your ass. I really am. Thank you. I appreciate it.